My life was completely transformed by an ayahuasca experience that I had in 2013. And I love telling this story too, because it's really the tale of two lives. That first life, that earlier life, was the corporate life, the rat race. I believed in the matrix, I just did my everyday thing, going to work every single day. And then I had that ayahuasca experience and everything opened up. I now live in the wide open spaces, in the wide open possibilities of life. And it's a classic comic book story. I had an experience that transformed me and gave me superpowers, which I now use on a day-to-day basis to help tens of hundreds of people and maybe eventually thousands and hundreds of thousands. So if you'd like to hear this story, then stay tuned and let's get started. I like to say that I was raised by scientists. My father was an electrical engineer, my uncle also. My grandfather was a chemist, and he worked on the triggers for the H-bomb for the US government after World War II. So I definitely grew up in a family that believed that science was everything, and that religion and spirituality really had no place in day-to-day life. They actually looked at the religious beliefs of people and said, people actually believe these fairy tale concepts, these legends, these stories, these fables are true? Doesn't really work for me. The stories are interesting, but we can't believe in that as truth. And so I was raised in that environment, and how could I look at it any other way? It made perfect sense to me. And so I went through the majority of my life in that perspective, that we were born and we died, our consciousness was created, and then it was destroyed. And so I didn't really think anything of spirituality or religion. I didn't think that it was wrong or bad, but I wasn't going to be a part of it. And I lived in the corporate world as a video game producer for my entire career. So my girlfriend and I had put together our incomes and bought a beautiful, nice house. And we had dogs and we had this life that we really enjoyed. But at the same time, I was finding that I was coming to the end of my interest in video games. I was coming to the end of my interest in just doing the same old thing every day. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but it didn't seem right. It didn't feel totally right to just continue on that trajectory. Also, things were going fairly well, so I wasn't challenged necessarily. I wasn't excited by anything new. I had kind of figured out the corporate life. I had figured out how to live in the suburbs and do that everyday thing. And I'm a person who thrives under challenge. And, working in the video game industry had been challenging, but I found it to be less and less challenging, and the types of challenges were usually things that were completely outside of my control, so that I wasn't as encouraged or as excited about doing it. Up until this point, I also didn't believe that plant medicines were a good thing. They were drugs. And Nancy Reagan told me in the 80s when I was a kid that I should not do drugs. And so I believed that. And I thought that all drugs were bad, all drugs were addictive, and they would only cause harm, and there was no benefit to them whatsoever. So when my girlfriend's brother started bringing around plant medicines for us to try, mushrooms, DMT, that sort of thing, I was resistant. I was not excited about it, but we would do them anyway. And I would have various experiences, nothing too amazing, nothing too mind-blowing, nothing too transformative. But her brother brought over ayahuasca for us to try. And little did I know, that was going to be a huge transformation for me. Most people, when they do ayahuasca, they fly to Peru or they go to a shaman who's been doing and administering ayahuasca their entire lives and know it extremely well and are huge guides, and there's a full ceremony around it. In this case, my girlfriend's brother had never done anything like that. He was a tinkerer. He liked to figure things out for himself. So in a way, I could say maybe he was an amateur shaman. He was obviously an extremely good shaman, but he had never had any of the training nor most of the experience required to call himself an actual shaman. So despite all of this and not really knowing what ayahuasca was, we all decided to partake. So it was he, his wife, my girlfriend, and myself. We did this in our house in the suburbs of Chicago. And he also wasn't that knowledgeable about the dosage size. And so he definitely got the dosage wrong. And so I'm sure many of you are saying, oh no, boy, he really overdosed everybody. Actually, the opposite is true. He underdosed us all. So much so that I was actually the only one that experienced anything. Shortly after I took the ayahuasca, I began to feel a little bit of an upset stomach. Now, I was familiar with this because this is normally what I would feel in a mushroom scenario. So this upset stomach caused me to settle down and to sit in a particular spot and close my eyes, because that's what you're supposed to do on ayahuasca so that you can have the experience. We had a nice fire in the fireplace in our home, and everybody was in the living room doing about the same thing that I was doing. As the experience kicked in, the only thing that I noticed was that all of a sudden I could hear a voice in my head. This voice was not my own thoughts. It felt like it was an external voice completely. And this voice essentially invited me to ask it any question. As soon as that voice appeared, I knew it was some sort of incredible wisdom, some wisdom that I had never experienced before, and I knew it knew way more than what I knew. So I immediately started asking questions that I thought were pertinent to a voice of universal knowledge, which is what I was talking to. And so the first question that I asked was simply, how should I live? Now, if we go back for a second to the upset stomach feeling that I was experiencing, it was kind of getting worse and worse, really. And at this moment, when I asked the question, I felt this crazy urge to sit in a particular position. So I changed my position, my hand positioning, my legs, and once I got into the new position, that stomach feeling completely went away. And I kind of knew that it was telling me that's how I should live. And I laughed and I said, whoa, wait a minute. Thank you, but that's not what I meant. Like, how should I really live? And the voice said that I needed to love more. This was completely confusing to me because I thought, I love, right? Like, there's plenty of people that I love. I love my girlfriend and her family and my parents and my family and, my dogs and stuff, I love. But it was clear that this wasn't enough, but I had never even heard of this concept before. So I received at that moment my first visual, and the visual was that of the earth. You could see the little atmosphere around the surface of the earth. And I realized at that moment, or maybe that voice explained it to me, that was a representation of me. I was looking at myself as Earth, the planet. And that little gap, that atmospheric ring that goes around the planet, was separating me from all the rest of the universe. And the rest of the universe was filled with incredible planets and stars and nebula and all this beauty that I didn't have access to because I didn't love anything but my immediate surroundings. Of course, I didn't really truly understand what that meant for the longest time, but now I know that it was trying to teach me to have unconditional love for all. So I continued to ask more questions, and this really didn't last very long in comparison to what most ayahuasca experiences are. Most ayahuasca experiences are around 4 hours. I believe this was less than 30 minutes because I was underdosed, and everybody else was also underdosed. And I remember at one point that I heard the others talking, and they said, "Hey, are you feeling anything?" Like, "No, I'm not feeling anything." "Are you feeling anything?" "No, I'm not feeling anything." And at this moment, I was all excited to talk to them about this voice that I was talking to and some of the imagery that I had seen. So I sat up in my chair and I looked over at them and I said, "I'm talking to this voice that..." And then all of a sudden, the voice in my head said, "Don't talk to them right now." And this stomach feeling that I had got way worse. It was fine. It was truly fine. And then all of a sudden, just like, rah! And I realized, oh, I'm not supposed to talk to them right now. So I said, "Never mind." And I laid back down. Meanwhile, they're laughing, saying, "Well, he's obviously feeling something, so there must be something going on here." So they resumed trying to feel their experience. So after I sat back in my ideal position, then that stomach discomfort went away and I was able to continue talking to this voice. And one of the questions that I asked was a little bit about past lives. I thought, is there such a thing? What kind of happens after death? I don't remember my exact question. But what it immediately showed me was factory farms and cows being milked to death and animals being abused. And I knew immediately, like, there is such a thing as past lives. And we get to be all those animals at some point. Or we have been, we will be, we all are those things. And this was a brand new concept to me. And it was definitely a dark image, and I knew if I continued to focus on it, then the mood of the entire experience would change into a depressing one. So I asked them if we could move on, and they were very accommodating. They allowed me to move on to the next thing. But I've never forgotten that image, and it definitely changed the way that I look at humans and what we do to animals. Notice I just said they when I was talking about the voice that I was speaking to. Throughout most of the experience, it did seem like a singular voice. However, it eventually felt like multiple entities were there. And that was especially true of this next question. But I have to give a little preface on this next question. I had invested in a bunch of real estate. Obviously at the wrong time, because it was around 2008, 2007, 2006 that I was starting to purchase real estate, which was the height of the market, the worst possible time. So I was pretty worried about our financial situation in relation and in regard to the real estate. So here I am. I'm kind of embarrassed that I asked this question because here I am talking to the voice of universal knowledge. I could ask it anything about myself, about the world, about the spirit world. And what did I ask? I said, how's this real estate thing going to turn out? And to my surprise, I received a response that said, we, again, the they there, right? We don't really want you to fail, but we don't want you to succeed either. And I was like, what? Why? Like, what's the problem? I really care about my tenants. I'm not like some sort of awful slumlord. I'm making sure that they have everything that they need. I'm making sure that they're not living in crappy conditions. And if they're complaining, then I'm running to help them. I looked at them as my customers, as my friends even, to make sure that their lives were as good as I could possibly make them. But it wasn't about that. They said to answer that part of my protest, they used one word. And it was a word that I had never used to describe myself or really to describe anyone. I was raised to believe that the capitalist society, the capitalist approach, saving money, making money was an extremely good thing. So I was really shocked when they said greed. Boy, was I confused. Greed. So greed is the reason why you don't want me to succeed at real estate. So you're saying that I'm being greedy about this? Completely blew my mind. And really, if I look back on it now, I realize that, I wasn't following my passions. I was following the money. I got into real estate because I was trying to make our lives easier by having this income that was passive, that I didn't have to work so hard for. Okay, so ultimately, if we follow our passions, then we are led to incredible results. But if we just follow the money, we're not really going to be led to our incredible results, and we're probably not going to be led down our life path, the mission that we set out to have. So that was the lesson that I learned. Really, there were some other questions that I asked, but now I don't remember them anymore. It really began to end at this point. And it turns out that the other three never experienced anything. It was only I who was able to speak to this voice of universal knowledge. Okay, so where do the superpowers come in, you're asking? Well, first of all, the next day, the next week, I realized, that voice was so easy to talk to. I wonder if I could talk to it at any time. I wonder if I could do it even without taking ayahuasca. And what did I find? But yes, it was true. So I discovered that I could reach down deep and ask the questions or ask any question to the voice of universal knowledge. And if I practiced it enough, that those answers would start to come. I just called it The Voice, not the TV show, but The Voice of Universal Knowledge. And I enjoyed introducing it to other people that I thought wouldn't commit me for having a voice in my head. And they would ask it questions, and they were impressed by the answers. Either they'd be completely insightful, or the voice would have information that they wouldn't think that I would have, right? So with this, I continued to expand, and I ended up finding other people who could channel, and I started learning more and more about this entire world. Like I said, I was able to continue to speak to the voice of universal knowledge long after my ayahuasca experience. And that was a representation to me that now my channel was open. And once that channel was open, then I started to download more and more information. I started to receive things even though I wasn't specifically asking for them. And the information that I continued to receive showed me more and more about my intergalactic heritage. So we really get into comic book world at this point. If you are already a follower of metaphysics and the Pleiadians and Arcturians and all that sort of thing, then this is going to seem completely normal to you. However, if you are brand new to this concept, then this is where, like I said, it turns into a little bit of a comic book. There are many extra-dimensional collectives that are working with us every single day. And so what this did was help me realize that it was happening. And so eventually I received so much information that I was able to start using my gifts. We all come into this world with spiritual gifts, with our own modalities that we can use to make the world amazing, which is what our mission is. And so ayahuasca helped me realize what those gifts were. And my main modality, which is called the soul essence activation, is an activation that will bring forward the best versions of your past incarnations into your current one, especially as it relates to that life purpose that I was just talking about. So if this all seems like crazy talk to you, I completely understand, because it was to me. And if it wasn't for ayahuasca and having those personal experiences, I wouldn't believe it at all. And I've had so many amazing ones. I'll be making videos about them absolutely as I move forward. But for now, know and understand that you have brought with you the ability to do incredible things, things that science would say are completely impossible. But it isn't that science is opposed to it, and it isn't that spirituality is contradictory to science. In fact, they are exactly related to each other. And so what I say is that spirituality is just science that science hasn't figured out yet. So we are blazing the trail of a new science, and I'm very excited to be a part of that. And so if you watch my other videos on this channel, you're going to see me using the soul essence activation and many other activations that I've been learning week after week and month after month of working with incredible people who are wide open to the experience, working with other light workers and them giving me insights, and then receiving information from that voice of universal knowledge, the Hathors, the spirit of ayahuasca, or even source. It doesn't really matter where it comes from. All that matters is that you tune in, that you listen, and that you are excited about the information rather than saying, no, this isn't possible, this isn't real, no. Stop all of that and allow and be open to it. And the amazing things that you'll be able to do will not only blow your mind, but it'll blow everybody else's mind as well. So I'm not saying that you have to take ayahuasca in order to discover these things. Not at all. Most people, that isn't their path. I'm very unusual. Actually, I have been a shaman for ayahuasca in my past lives. And that was explained to me by the spirit of ayahuasca during one of my experiences. And she said that this is my medicine, that I'm particularly tuned to it, which is why when 4 of us took a lesser dose, that I was the only one that actually experienced anything, because I'm highly sensitive to it. And so that, of course, doesn't mean that that's your method. Your method is going to be your own, whether it's through meditation, talking to the master, which I explain in another video that you can watch right here, or any other number of possibilities. You can take a channeling class. There are so many things that you can do to discover your incredible gifts. And I would love for you to do that. I highly encourage you to do it because it makes this whole world completely different than what you might have thought it was. And what an amazing thing to wake up to every single day. Like, wow, what crazy new amazing thing am I going to learn today? And in my case, who am I going to be able to help today? Is there someone suffering that I'm going to be able to say my thing and do my actions and do my magic and make their lives better? I can't imagine any better life than that. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this story, there's many more stories. If you are into self-improvement, then definitely watch some of the other videos where I help you overcome different things in your life. And if you'd like more activations, then definitely tune into that. And if you'd like more activations than that, you can download them off of my website. And I'll leave a link in the description below so that you can download a nervousness relief activation. That if you're feeling especially nervous before you're about to do something, like speak in front of a group, then you listen to this and it makes that whole nervousness feeling melt away. So thanks so much for watching this video. It means the world to me. I highly encourage you to subscribe to the channel, click on the bell icon, and leave me a comment and let me know what you thought. It just helps support me and the channel grow. I love you unconditionally, and I'll see you in the next video.